Yay!
Oh, okay.
How was
Well,
that?
hello,
Happening.
everybody. I'm sorry we started a little late. We were just waiting to see who else would arrive, but welcome. I'm Debbie Quinn. I'm the Library Director of Hastings Public Library, and we are delighted to have Elizabeth Knight, author of Repair Revolution, here tonight. We also have the person who spearheaded the Repair Cafes, Lindsay Taylor, and this should be a really interesting presentation. So let me just give you a little background on the author. Repair Revolution explores the philosophy and wisdom of repairing, as well as the right to repair movement. It provides inspiration and instructions for starting, staffing, and sustaining your own repair events. Fixperts share their favorite online repair resources, as well as tips and step-by-step instructions for how to make your own repairs. Repair Revolution is about more than fixing material objects in an age of overconsumption and planned obsolescence. Do-it-yourself repair is a way of caring for our lives, our communities, and our planets, and it couldn't come at a better time. So I'm so happy to have met Elizabeth, and let's hear what she has to say. Take it away, Elizabeth.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Debbie. And I would like to say that I learned all of this the hard way when I started the first Repair Cafe in my county in 2016. So John and I were very careful when we were working on the book to share the things that we thought would make life easier for other people who wanted to do this too. So where does it all start? Well, it starts with the fact that resources are finite. As early as 2013, Americans generated about 254 million tons of garbage, furniture, clothing, and appliances, according to the United States Environmental Protection Agency. One way to reduce waste is to repair things rather than toss them, as in the circular economy. We tend to think of just reduce, reuse, recycle. We all know that recycling is much more expensive and much more difficult to do now that many countries like China don't want our foreign waste anymore. We need to have a fourth R, and it starts with repair. If you repair it, you can reuse it and eventually recycle it. And if you repair it, you may be able to make it into something different. County waste management and resource recovery agencies recognize the value of grassroots initiatives, such as repair cafes and fix-it clinics, to help reduce the amount of waste headed to the landfill. Now, so where did all this start? You're looking at a photo of Martina Postma. She was a journalist who wrote about sustainability issues in the Netherlands. And she said that after the birth of her second child, she was walking down the street one day and looked at a bunch of stuff that had been kicked to the curb, a chair, some torn things, small electrical appliances, and thought, these things aren't that badly damaged. They shouldn't be tossed. There's got to be another way. She wanted to, as she said, it was no longer enough to write about the idea about sustainability. She wanted a hands-on action. So she contacted a friend who had a movie theater and asked to borrow the lobby for a one-off pop-up repair cafe, and found people in the neighborhood who knew how to repair things. And she said the goal when she started this back in 2009 is to, quote, bring repair back into the local society in a modern way, to preserve and spread repair knowledge, and to promote social cohesion by bringing together neighbors with very different backgrounds. Today, there are 2,178 repair cafes in 36 countries. Now, why do they call it a cafe? Well, here's one in action. The picture of the gingerbread house was at a repair cafe run by a friend of mine, Jill Padua, in Narrowsburg, New York, and she has donations of food from local restaurants. Jill used to be a caterer, a really good one. And the idea is when you bring people together while they're waiting to have a repair, they'll sit and have a snack or a cup of tea and coffee together, and they'll actually chat with each other. And that's one way to strengthen community bonds. Now, this is John Wackman. John had read an article in the 2012 New York Times about an interview with Martina Postma about the Repair Cafe. John went on to found the very first Repair Cafe in New York State, and I think it was the third or fourth in the entire country. For many years until John's untimely death this January, John was the coordinator, communicator, and cheerleader for repair cafes in the Hudson Valley Catskills and Capital District of New York.
Excuse me, pardon me.
Excuse me, somebody needs to mute themselves, please. There's a lot of noise in the background. Thank you.
John had invited me to co-author our book, Repair Revolution. He had the contract before I even knew he was writing a book. And it came about because he was volunteering his woodworking skills at a repair cafe, and a woman walked in and was just gobsmacked about what was being done right in front of her. And she said, "Who's in charge?" And somebody sent her to talk to John, and she evidently said to him, "There's a book in this." And John invited me to write parts of it based on the follow-up reports that I sent to my repair cafe team after every event. Stats, you know, what kinds of things do people bring in? Where did they come from? How many things were fixed? How many things weren't? If we couldn't fix it, why? And then also there would always be a story that would make you laugh so hard you couldn't get your breath, or cry so hard you wanted to put your head down on the table. And John said, "I need those stories in the book." Now, the Department of Environmental Conservation in New York State for years has sent out their solid waste and recycling newsletters, and they've always included the repair cafes in them for at least 3 years. This is a copy of one during the height of the pandemic, when they were acknowledging that because of the pandemic, it wasn't appropriate to meet in a confined space and to share communities and to bring people together to repair things. So the idea was, well, what was next? How are we going to cope with this? And Lindsay hosted the very first Rivertown Repair Cafe via Zoom. And this is an idea that had appeared and was starting to happen all across the country as people realized just because you're at home and you can't gather doesn't mean that the things aren't still falling apart. And what are we going to do with it? And the other thing that we found was the coaches said, as one of them had written to me, "I've got repair cafe withdrawal symptoms. I miss what are they going to bring in today? I don't know how to fix this. I need to talk to other people." It's more than just the thing, it's the connections. Now, the next repair cafe is going to be in your area on October 16th, the Dobbs Ferry Public Library. I'm showing this one to help promote it, but two, I'm often asked, well, what kinds of organizations sponsor or partner or host repair cafes? And libraries have been from the beginning champions of repair cafes because a repair cafe offers an opportunity for hands-on learning. The folks on the right are in Newburgh. They host a repair cafe at an organization called Gritworks, where people who don't have office space of their own can go rent a space for the day and work. And they're wearing the yellow t-shirts of the local time bank. In my area, our repair cafe in Warwick had partnered with the local makers market. A makers market is where people get together to learn how to make and repurpose and reuse things. And this Christmas market, held on Thanksgiving weekend, was an opportunity for artists and craftspeople to sell the things that they had made with repurposed and recycled materials. We were invited to have a pop-up cafe that had consisted of 2 coaches, Suzanne doing the jewelry repairs and her husband, Mike, who was doing the small electrics. Mike had never volunteered at a repair cafe, and he looked up at one point kind of puzzled and thrilled and said, "People are really happy when you fix their stuff." This was also a repair cafe. It was our second one, and something happened that really set the tone for why it means so much. We were getting ready to clear the space because it was a community party center and a band was coming in to set up. And a woman came in, an elderly woman who looked like she hadn't taken very good care of herself. And she was very upset. And she was holding a silver chain in her hand. And I said, I'm sorry, but Suzanne has already cleared her table and loaded stuff in her car. and we've got to be out of here in 10 minutes. And the woman said, I've got to have something fixed today. And I said, well, what is it? And she showed me the chain. I said, there's a jewelry store a couple miles down the road. And she said, I don't have money for that. And I said, well, we're going to have another repair cafe in a month and a half. And she said, I can't wait. And I looked at her and said, what is this really about? The silver chain had a small silver vial that held her grandson's ashes. And she had worn that every day since it had been given to her. And she said, I can't be without it. So I turned to the band and said, you got to give us about 20 minutes. And I went flying out to the parking lot and got Suzanne, who came back and sat down and did the repair. And while the repair was being made, the woman told us the really tragic, awful, awful story about how her grandson had died. And when Suzanne slipped the vial back on the repaired chain and put it around the woman's neck, the woman stood there with tears streaming down her face, threw her arms around Suzanne and said, you don't know what you've done today. And as Kathy Linton, one of our repair coaches, very eloquently said, we're not just fixing things, we're fixing people's souls. These things mean something. Here's a repair cafe in action in New Paltz. This was an NBC crew came to film a repair cafe in action. It was the NBC Nightly News crew. And the journalist Harry Smith reported, quote, the idea is exquisitely simple, neighbor helping neighbor, and we marveled at the meticulous, painstaking care that goes into every single repair. And he didn't say the part about, and besides that, it's fun. This was a real email that I got the morning before one of our repair cafe. We have a woman who is a retired high school teacher for advanced placement, and she taught marketing. When she retired, she started a business called the Mending Maven to go along with her custom cake baking business. And because Deanne is so good at repairing zippers, she's gotten quite a reputation. And she's especially good because she's found out that you don't necessarily need to replace the zipper. About a good percentage of the time, the zipper is simply stuck. So she's taught this technique to many of the other team members and also to people who walk through the door. People, what kinds of things do they bring? Sewing machines, vacuum cleaners. You can see the man in the blue shirt is the coach. The woman in the coat on the floor with them is the owner of the vacuum cleaner. And as one of the coach says, it's amazing the amount of cat fur that comes out of vacuum cleaners. What other kinds of things do people bring? The most popular item brought in for repair across the entire US is, guess what it is? It's lamps. In Europe, it's a particular kind of a coffee maker, but here it's lamps. Warwick usually sees between 20 and 30 lamps at every single repair cafe. But in addition to lamps, it's also most of the kind of small appliances that you would see in a kitchen: fans, toasters, blenders, radios, but also record players, clocks, irons, and even keyboards and guitars. The man in the middle with the sticker on his glasses is Rob Shaw, and those are his kids. He's got a pair of twins in their 20s, and his daughter is, I think she's now 16. He is an IT specialist, and he brings his team, including his kids, in to look at digital repairs for us because he wants them to learn a hands-on skill too. His wife, Reg Shaw, is part of our sewing team. And Reg says that she moved her family. One of the reasons she moved her family from New Jersey to Warwick, New York was because we had a repair cafe. She said any community that cares about keeping stuff out of the landfill and teaching people how to turn trash into treasure was a place where she wanted to live. We also have, this is from one of the other repair cafes in the Hudson Valley. You can see a young girl is learning how to repair jewelry. Frank Schmidt volunteers at a variety of repair cafes, I think 4 or 5 of them, and he works, he's a former IBM engineer, as are many repair coaches, have been engineers and teachers, but he specializes in working with students on the autism spectrum to teach them skills that they can learn to get jobs. And there is a repair cafe in Florida, the state of Florida, that specializes in teaching students and adults on the autism spectrum those skills just so they can get their own job. It's called I think it's called Green Autism. It's a wonderful organization. And the woman who started it actually came from the Hudson Valley. This is a photograph from a repair cafe that's part of a transition movement. The transition movement started in England years ago. Now it's in the US, and the idea was to help communities transition off of fossil fuels by finding more sustainable ways to maintain life in a community. It's everything from a community garden to helping people develop solar connections to something as simple as a sewing machine. But the woman who sent this photo said, what we're actually doing is mending community. And at every repair cafe, there will be some child bringing in a worn, torn, stuffed lovey. Some of them won't even release the lovey to the person who's doing the repair. This one says teddy bear. It's not, it's a back end of a giraffe. But in Warwick, we have a woman who has a side business taking people's unwanted fur coats. Let's say you've inherited Aunt Martha's fur coat and you really don't believe in that, or it's not your look. She will make a series of custom teddy bears using the fur coat and the lining to make the trim on the bear's ears and paws. One day she was surprised. A young woman stood in front of her table holding a small stuffed dog in her palm. In the other hand, she had a big sparkly diamond. The young woman's fiance told the team, the sewing team, including Jobo Bears, the story behind the dog. Evidently, the bride-to-be was born so prematurely that she was put in the hospital in an isolette. She wasn't expected to survive, but her parents gave her a toy stuffed dog to nestle in the isolette with her. And obviously she did survive. And she grew up and got a real dog who ripped the nose off the toy dog. And now she was here to get it fixed because she was going to carry the toy dog as part of her wedding bouquet. So with every repair, there's a story. One of the other things that is very popular in our area and many other repair cafes is a kids take it apart table. The man in the black shirt with his back to us is Jim, and his two boys. He has a now 8-year-old and a now 6-year-old have been part of that team ever since it started. He collects a lot of things that are safe for kids to work on it, and then he takes the plugs off. There's a whole series of kid-sized screwdrivers. And as typical at one of our repair cafes, a woman brought in a hairdryer that she said when she plugged it in, it smoked and stank and could it be fixed? And the repair coach diagnosed it as dead and done. And she said, where's the trash can? And he said, no, we don't do that here. And she said, okay, where's the recycling bin? And he said, why don't you take it over to the kids take it apart table? And she decided that that was, as she said, the kids' reuse PlayStation is even better than the recycling bin. And Jim is wonderful. He takes home all of these bits and bobs and brings back what can still be used for the next repair cafe and recycles what cannot all by himself. Our repair cafe, like many of them, has a team that does small tool repair and knife and tool sharpening. My husband is the one in the green plaid shirt holding the knife sharpening. The woman in the blue jacket said she was had planned to go out to dinner because the knives that she had had since she was a young bride were too dull to use, but she brought them to the repair cafe for the first time, and she said, now that they're fixed, I'm going to go home and cook dinner. And at another repair cafe, we had an elderly gentleman for whom our team sharpened scissors and a knife, and he insisted that the guy who would sharpen them test them on his own beard and hair. They passed. Now, there are beyond the basics repairs. We've talked about small electrics, there's wooden repairs, there's sewing repairs, both hand and machine, small electrics. Bikes are very popular. At the New Paltz Repair Cafe, Don Grease does digital repair to vintage photos. A woman from a garden club comes and you bring in your ailing houseplant and she can give you advice. And the young woman at the bottom is a licensed massage therapist, and she and her partner will give you a 10-minute massage, shoulder massage, while you're seated in a chair, in a real chair. And also there is one of the authors who has published a 2-volume history of the Hudson Valley, offers wordsmithing skills. You can bring in a cover letter or a resume and he'll help you tweak it. And there's also a listening station. One woman invites people to come and sit down and says, you've got 10 minutes, what would you like me to know? And you can sit down and have someone who actually won't talk at you, but will listen. All of those things are forms of repair. So what gets fixed? I included this photo because there is a stack of, that big stack are the repair tickets for the jobs that we handled, and most of them have 2 items per ticket. And on the left, you can see the little skinny pile of how many are not able to be fixed. At 2 of Warwick's most recent repair cafes, we fixed 133 items and couldn't fix 11. And another one, we fixed 130 items and couldn't fix 7 of them. The reason we usually can't fix it is either A, it would take too much time, B, we don't have a specific unique part, or if it requires a unique tool, or we have sold out of the 3-way switches and we'll have to send you down to the hardware store in town. And we like to say we always like to support the local hardware store because we buy our supplies from them, and we offer lamp parts, plugs, wiring, and bike parts for purchase at our cost. One of the repair coaches in many repair cafes specializes in gluing things. You'd be surprised how much broken crockery comes in, and people either don't know what kind of glue to use, they don't have the patience to put it together, they need somebody else to hold it. Gluing is such a hot topic that there is a repair cafe run by Don Fick in North Carolina that runs a series of Zoom meetings. And when it was one entire Zoom repair meeting with coaches handling at it remotely, walking people through what needed to be glued at their house, was all about the variety of glues. I'd never even heard of shoe glue, but it really does work to repair old sneakers. But the coach here said that sometimes, even if the glue doesn't hold, sometimes the best repair is just listening to each other. Now, our repair cafe received certificates of appreciation from both the county, the town, and the village. And one of my favorite ones was the village wrote, "We celebrate the cafe for its contribution to repair the beloved, but it should have been beloved broken items, and to create a community crossroads, showing us all that fixing can be fun." But this is my favorite. This young man is 13 years old, and he's holding the shirts that his dad had brought in to be repaired that day. They were successfully repaired, and Ethan had come to a variety of repair cafes, and I had asked him what brought him to this in the first place. He was a member of a local parochial school, and he was going to receive the sacrament of Catholic confirmation. But in order to do that, he and his other 7th and 8th grade classmates had to acquire a certain number of community service hours. So Ethan had come to our repair cafe, and he was served at the door as a greeter. He helped people carry things in and out of their cars. He helped collect the job tickets and held the door when people were going out. And while I was waiting for his dad to pick him up, I said, "So what do you think of all this?" And this is a direct quote from a 13-year-old boy. "It's nice to know that the news saying so many sad stories. There's a place where people are willing to help you, no matter who you are, for no other reason than to help you in the best way possible. It gives me hope." So if you'd like to know more about how to start a repair cafe, here are some of the best websites with lots of information. And I was talking to you about the Repair Cafe TV with the there was one about the special glues. There's one about how to fix sewing machines, and one about repairing wooden items. There is a lot of information easily available. And if you need information in more detail, John Wackman and I put everything that we thought we wished we'd known, including the overview, the history, and the practicalities in Repair Revolution. And if your local library doesn't have a copy, you may buy it please buy it from a local bookshop. And if that's not possible, here are two online sources besides Amazon to support. So thank you very much.
Yay. Thank you, Elizabeth.
You're welcome.
Thanks so much, Elizabeth. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Can I ask you, how did you get started and when did you get started?
It's kind of a long story. I was new to Warwick, fairly new, and I am the kind of person who grew up in a household where things were not thrown out. My mother was what is now considered a sewist, a combination sew and artist. She made our clothes, she made her clothes. Nothing was thrown out. She mended it. It was passed down to my younger sister. My dad made bookcases out of old ammo boxes. We were a military family. So I grew up that way. When I was furnishing when I left home, I was furnishing my own apartment. For the first time, I was relying on secondhand furniture and things I could get off the sidewalk. When I moved to Hoboken, New Jersey, after living in Manhattan, I barely bought anything. All you had to do was know what day did they put the bulk trash out. And when we were moving to Warwick and we were looking for a house, I asked the realtor, so what day is the kick it to the curb day? And she said, oh, we don't do that here. And I thought, oh, I'll bet you do. When I saw the first year's village bulk trash pickup and what ended up on the sidewalk, I was gobsmacked. The amount of stuff, the quality of stuff. At the time I was volunteering to teach English as a second language. Many of my students need books. I kept stopping the car and scraping the books off the sidewalk and putting them in the back of my car. And then I began to ask, well, this is an awful lot of stuff for a small village. Where does it go? How much does it cost to get there? And why don't they have a secondhand store that can handle furniture? Well, and I found out too much of what leaves Warwick ends up 72 miles at a landfill in Pennsylvania. And I thought there had to be a better way. And I was working with a member of a local makers group called Wickham Works, and we were hoping to rent a space and have a combination maker space. And I had recently visited a repair cafe. There was an article in a local sustainability magazine called Dirt Magazine about a repair cafe in Beacon. And I'd never heard of it. And I thought, that's a really cool idea. And I've got a lamp that doesn't work. So I took my lamp to the repair cafe and thought this was just wonderful. And there's got to be one closer to home. And Beacon was over an hour. And I found out there wasn't. So that combined with the stuff on the bulk trash pickup and the makerspace, when I found out that we could not find a place that was offered free to do both of those events on a regular basis, I thought there has to be another way. So I contacted the mayor of our village and said, do you know what a repair cafe is? And he had not heard of it. And I explained it. And I said, I think we need one here. And he also introduced me to the deputy mayor, who happened to be on the county's Green Committee. He was a county legislature, and I told him about it. And then I started writing press releases and going to talk to the Rotary Club, all the senior clubs I could find. And I couldn't get much traction. Every time I would go to a club and explain what this was and say, how many of you grew up like me in a home where you didn't get a new coat, you got your mother's hand-me-down coat with new trim put on it, new buttons. And most people raised their hands. And then I would say, well, how many people would be willing to be part of something called a repair cafe, and explained what it was. And I didn't get very many hands raised. And then I went to my local library and said, I'm stuck. I'm fairly new to town. I don't have a kid in school. I don't have a dog to walk in the park. Who do I need to know? One of the reference librarians said, I know two people at the local high school. I know the IT guy, and I know somebody else who grew up in a family that her family had a lamp business and she can fix things. And then she also suggested I contact the Historical Society because there was someone who did wooden repairs and other repairs for them. So I did get those three people who said they would be a repair coach, but I wanted to offer other sorts of repair categories. I wanted 10 repair categories. And we were down to with 3 weeks before we were supposed to open in a basement of a community center. And I thought, do I just pull the plug on this? We don't have enough. And then I thought, no, what am I going to do if I open it and I don't have enough repair coaches or nobody comes? What are they going to do? Fire me? I'm volunteering. So I called the mayor and said, you know those pictures in the newspaper where you stand there with a pair of 4-foot tall cardboard scissors pretending to open a ribbon at the entrance to a building? He said, yes. I said, well, we're going to have a new business, in quotes, the Repair Cafe at the community center. And would you be available for a photo op? And he said, oh, sure. And the mayor was the person who had sent me to the Historical Society. So he said, call the Chamber of Commerce and they'll arrange a photo shoot. So the Chamber of Commerce did arrange a photo shoot. And the mayor said to me, what 3 repair categories have you got? And I said, well, I've got a guy who can do wooden chairs, thanks to you. And I have somebody who can do a lamp, and I have somebody who can do laptops. He said, ask each of them to show up for the photo and hold the object that they're going to repair. So that's what happened. The Chamber of Commerce and elected officials came, and the photo appeared in the newspaper at no cost to us because we had no money. And after that, my phone rang off the hook.
Yay!
So go talk to your library. They knew a lot more people than I did. Go talk to historical societies. Also, one of the other things is look for the people in your village, town, neighborhood who already repair things, whether for themselves, whether as a business, and ask them if they'd be willing to volunteer their time. Everybody I asked who did that for a living, except the guy who had the local bike shop, because I didn't want to put anybody out of business. And he said, I'm a one-person operation. He said, I can't take on any more. And I said, I didn't want you to feel that we were cutting into your territory. And he said, you're only going to be open 3 times out of a whole year when I'm here. So he said, just send them to me if you need parts. Fine. And we now get the last 2 repairs cafes, which is pretty typical. We had 77 people and the other one had 80. And they're from anywhere from 9 to 19 different towns, most from New York, but we also get some from Pennsylvania and New Jersey. It's just, and people have supported this because a member of the Chamber of Commerce said to me at one point, well, the point of, aren't you afraid you're going to put somebody out of business? And I said, no, we're going to be sending people to the hardware store. I've already talked to the bike man who operates the bike shop, and he's now retired to Florida, so there is no bike shop. And she said, well, what about things like lamps? And I said, well, where's the lamp repair shop? And there isn't one. And she came to the Repair Cafe and realized when somebody stood up at one of the repair cafes, our very first one, a 9-year-old girl walked in with a pair of lamps that had sat on her grandmother's nightstand, and grandma had passed away and the lamps had been given to the little girl. And I said to the woman at the Chamber of Commerce, where do you go buy grandma's lamps? You can go buy a lamp, but you can't buy grandma's lamps. And most of the lamps that we see at the repair cafes are in fact vintage lamps or quirky, unusual lamps, like the 2-foot-high ceramic of a flamenco dancer in a bright orange dress. And at another repair cafe, there was a woman standing in the middle of the room. We meet in a senior center, so there must have been easily almost 70, 80 people all at one time in there. And she's brandishing her lamp and she says to the room, see this? This is a dumb lamp, but it sits on my reading stand and I don't want to have to drive 40 minutes to Target and spend $80 to get another dumb, ugly lamp just because I don't know what's wrong with this one. And
Yeah,
what was-
lamps are number one in Hastings too, Elizabeth.
there you go. And Lindsay, you can tell stories better. You've got your own story. Tell one of your Repair Cafe stories.
No, I wasn't prepared. I just really love in your stories, what you focus on is a lot of the human element. And really, that's what we've found. Just like when people bring in something sentimental, when there's something that's shattered that can be glued back together, there are stories behind almost every object.
Exactly. And Naomi Oban, who's a wood repair coach at New Paltz, said the community energy is just so strong when people get together to keep a family heirloom going for another 50 years or to fix the vacuum that keeps the floor clean. One of our coaches said to me one time, you know, I really like the idea of keeping useful things useful and out of landfills, but it sure seems that there are lots of people who love really ugly lamps. Ken Fixit Boscher, who volunteers at 6 different repair cafes in the Hudson Valley, said this, I picture a square with 4 connected points and a couple of words at each corner. To learn, to teach, to fix, to help. A repair cafe is like a cross between the Antiques Roadshow and the Island of Broken Toys.
I'm going to steal that.
I'm grateful to be part of it because it touches a lot of lives. Michelle, who runs the Repair Cafe in Green Ossining, I love marrying the philosophy of creating community with the practicality of fixing things. She got started. She took a table at a local farmer's market and had a group of people sitting there repairing things and passed out information about a repair cafe. One of the people I met online when I sent out a questionnaire across the country to every repair cafe organizer I could find in preparation for writing the book had a brilliant idea. Her town in Connecticut had an annual fair, and she took a booth to spread the idea about what a repair cafe was. She said there wasn't enough room and there wasn't enough electric sockets that they could actually sit and fix things. She took a cloth banner and had people sit there and showed them how to sew a button on, and the button spelled out Repair Cafe. And then the banner was eventually hung in the repair cafe, the actual repair cafe, when it opened. And she said she was just amazed. She had asked people in the community, they set up a couple of donation points. They wanted people to donate just white buttons. And she said she had everybody sitting there from little boys to old ladies and everybody in between, all sitting there learning how. She said, you'd be surprised how many people don't even know how to sew a button on anymore.
Which repair cafe was that?
This was in Connecticut.
Oh, I'd love to see that banner.
Actually, I probably have a photograph of it that I can send it to you. It's the woman's name, first name is Elizabeth. Remind me about that and I'll send you.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
I mean, what a brilliant idea.
Yes.
Is there any question that you would like me to answer about a repair cafe other than, yes, it's hard work, and yes, it's also the most satisfying thing other than teaching English as a second language that I've ever done.
Oh.
It isn't just that you're teaching skills. It isn't just that you're saving things out of the landfill. When I started my first repair cafe, John said to me, yeah, you think you're going to keep things out of the landfill, and it's a really good effort, but the really big polluters are not us, it's the manufacturers. But this sets the signal about the way that the world ought to run. But he said, the thing you don't yet know is you're going to create community. And I thought, I don't know what he means by that. I mean, I've been in marketing, I've done visual merchandising for stores. I know what that is, but I didn't know what he meant. And I called him after the first one and I said, it happened in front of my face in the first 15 minutes. And that's what really brings people back. Yes, it's the camaraderie and the satisfaction. And the interesting thing is, I'll bet you'll find also when a coach comes 2 or 3 times and has volunteered and likes what he or she does, next time, they'll say, oh, I got this guy I used to work with. He could fix bikes and he can also do wooden repairs. He said, you should call Rich. And I called up Rich and said, well, what exactly kinds of things do you like to repair? And he said, I can fix anything anybody who owned their own home for 50 years had to do. But people bring their friends, their coworkers, their spouses. The guy who said people sure love ugly lamps. Next time I turned around at a repair cafe, he brought his wife, a retired nurse who specialized in doing knitting repairs. She even came after she'd had surgery on her foot and propped her foot up in a cast to sit there and chat with the others. The coaches say that they love the idea that they're still learning, and they love the camaraderie of working with others. And oftentimes you'll see 2 or 3 people from different, quote, departments working. One woman brought in a stuffed teddy bear with a hat. And when you pushed a button, the bear was supposed to dance and sing Christmas songs. He wasn't working properly. So the sewing team had to take him apart so that the mechanical team could get at what was wrong with the electrics. And you should have seen the owner's face when that magenta bear with the purple hats belted out, rocking around the Christmas tree. So people like the problem solving. They like the fact the coaches often say when they're unloading their cars, I wonder what they're going to bring in today. There's just no way to predict it. And that's part of the fun.
Tim Donahue has a question. Do you want to ask it?
Yes, thank you. Thanks for your presentation. Really kicking some ass there. Like to see all that. My question is also sort of a promotion also for a future library event that maybe folks would be interested in. It's about a book that you may know about. It's called Less is More by Jason Hickel.
I don't.
Yeah, I mean, it's espousing, just as the title would say, degrowth, not continually buying new things, but buying fewer things and repairing them. And in it, he talks a little bit about planned obsolescence, which he's saying in Europe, I think there is the efforts toward legislation about tackling planned obsolescence. I was curious whether you knew of anything in the US, whether there's groundswell about that movement.
Actually, there is. It's called the Right to Repair movement. And it is planned obsolescence. This was developed during the Great Depression in order to stimulate the economy. People were encouraged to buy things even and not fix them. But the biggest problem is manufacturers like Apple and Tesla and other trade organizations, they design things in such a way that you either need a special sized screwdriver that you can't get at the hardware store, or if you want to take the battery off the back of your digital device, it's glued in. If you want to take the battery out, the flap to get it out is glued on. So what's happened is the FTC in May of this year said that the Federal Trade Commission, and then back up, the Biden administration and the Federal Trade Commission have supported the Right to Repair movement in recent months of this year. In a May report, the FTC said that manufacturers provided, quote, scant evidence that their product design hindering third-party repair is necessary. The companies make money by making you take your Apple device to an Apple store instead of a third party down the street that repairs all kinds of other mechanical devices. So it is by design. And what's happening now is consumer groups are coming together to ask for legislation to say, this is an unfair practice. The idea is if I buy it, but I have a tool to which I don't have access, or I have a guidebook, a repair manual to which I don't have access, or it has to go to the manufacturer's repair shop, designated repair shop, I don't really own it. The manufacturer does. They're controlling what I can do with something I paid money to have. So what's happening is in July, President Biden issued an executive order designed to boost competition in the manufacturing sector and directed the Federal Trade Commission to rule against, quote, anti-competitive restrictions on using independent repair shops or do-it-yourself repairs. The order has opened the door for an enhanced federal role in protecting consumers' ability to repair their electronics. It's expected, legislation is expected to be introduced in Congress as soon as next year. But I mean, there's legislation in something like 22 states, but it hasn't gone to the level where it's got real traction yet. At least that's the most.
I put a couple of things in the chat about that from New York to Massachusetts.
Yep. Massachusetts is ahead of us.
That's why I put them in.
Yeah.
To show it can happen.
And I see David Liu has his hand raised. Is there a question there?
Yes, I do. First, I'm Dave. I'm a member of the Ardsley Conservation Committee. And hi. How's everyone? Thank you, Elizabeth, for the wonderful presentation. My question is, we want to do a lot of this stuff here, but how do you address people who have concerns about liability? Do you get everybody to sign a disclaimer before their items get repaired?
We do. Generally, as it turns out, Warwick's Repair Cafe and only one other, I guess, in the entire Hudson Valley has had to have insurance. Because our Repair Cafe is held in the Senior Center in Warwick Town Hall, you can't even hold a book club meeting in that building unless you have a certificate of insurance on file with the town clerk. So we were able to get our insurance most recently through Sustainable Hudson Valley, thanks to Melissa Everts. We have a two-sided job ticket. And on one side, it's got all the information about how did you hear about us? Where are you? What are you bringing? What's wrong with it? But the flip side has this whole list of house rules. Let me just get this.
By the way, David, we do the same thing in Hastings. We have it on one side, the house rules that you have to sign, and the other side, everything that Elizabeth said.
That's
And
good.
it
That's good to
says,
know.
if you offer repair items for repair, you do so at your own risk. The organizers, sponsors, and any and all event co-sponsors of the Repair Cafe Warwick, and we list them, and any and all repair persons and any and all volunteers are not liable for any physical damage or loss resulting from work performed at a repair cafe. Persons making repairs offer no guarantees and are not liable if objects in the repair cafe turn out not to work properly at home. Now, we've never had a problem with it, but it's wise to look into your host organization or sponsor may already have an insurance policy that covers that liability. Check there, have a lawyer look at what it is you're writing, but it's better to be careful. Every time I talk about a repair cafe to people who've never seen one or done it, the thing that some version of this comes up. Well, what happens if somebody brings in a picket lamp for repair, your guy fixes it and she takes it home and plugs it in and burns the house down? First of all, that has never, ever happened at any of them in the entire Hudson Valley Catskills of which we are aware, or New Jersey either. But it's wise to have some wording that says, if I bring it in, I'm doing so at my own risk. Does that mean that they can never sue you? No, it doesn't. This is a litigious time and a litigious society, but it's a heads up. We're doing our best to help you. We're not making any promises. Do you still want us to go ahead? And all of that in the Repair Revolution Chapter 7, How Do I Get One in This Town? All of that is addressed in great detail, more than I'm telling you tonight.
And David, in Hastings, we did ours at the community center with support from the Hastings Conservation Commission. which is part of the Hastings government. So we had it in writing that we were being covered under them, community center / village. The next one in Dobbs Ferry is at the library, but it's also being supported by Sustainable Dobbs, which is the village. So we got in writing from them that we're under their insurance. And then we still have, just like Elizabeth, one side with what the item is, who you are, and the other side. And we've never had an issue either.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But thanks for sharing. I really appreciate that. I hope that, Carol and I and other members of the committee could try to convince Ardsley to put one on. I know, you guys had it in Hastings, and then you had a virtual one, and then it traveled to Dobbs. And I didn't know that you can actually get CSC points, but now that we know that is more ammo. Yeah.
So please email me and I can set up a time to meet with you, meet with your board, meet with your sustainable group, whatever. We really want it to reach from Hastings up through Sleepy Hollow. We want to all support each other.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's make
Thank
it
you.
happen.
And one of the other places that's a very popular host for repair cafes are schools and churches, and they often have their own insurance and their own liability.
Tom mentioned a book before. Can you put that in the chat? That was
Oh, the less is more.
Oh, is that what it is? Less is more.
Less is more, and I actually ordered it for the Hastings Library today, so it will be on the shelves soon.
Perfect. Thank you, Tim.
Any other questions from anyone? Well, I think this was just fantastic, and it's so in keeping with this town that we live in, and it's nice to know that there are other towns who are interested as well. But thank you so much, Elizabeth.
You're very welcome.
Really, really enjoyed it. And Lindsay too, you contributed so much. And you want to just give the information again about the Dobbs Ferry Repair Cafe?
Yeah, so the Rivertowns Repair Cafe, which is hosted by Dobbs Ferry and supported by Hastings Repair Cafe and et cetera, is going to be at the Dobbs Ferry Public Library on the 16th.
Right.
Okay, from 11 to 3. And so we so far have a bunch of textile people. We have electronic, mechanical. We'll be serving refreshments, free and for every village. It's not just for people in Dobbs. It's from wherever you're from. So please join us and tell your friends. We'd love to have you.
Lindsay, are you going to be outdoors or indoors this time?
We're going to be hybrid. So that's a good thing to say. It's outdoors, but it's in like a parking garage area. So it has a roof area, but the sides are open. So if it rains, there's no rain date because we'll still be covered, but the
Great.
sides are open. So that's a good question. We're not, we'll see about in spring 2022 about having them indoors again. We just have to follow the science.
Right.
Right. We had to be masked up. We were required by the town to be masked up, and I sat outside and greeted people and said, we'd love to have you. And if you don't have a mask, we're happy to give you one.
Right. We probably should do that too. I know we put hand sanitizer out, but since it's going to be a little bit enclosed, maybe we should have masks too. Whatever people are most comfortable with. I mean, that's
Right. I see somebody has a hand up, but it's only a telephone number, so I don't know who it is.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Jem, and I work at the Kingston, New York and Woodstock, New York repair cafes. I've been doing it many, many years. And I just wanted to let you know that we just had, last month, we had our first repair cafe in Kingston in almost over a year and a half. And John Wackman was integral part of our repair cafe, and this was our first without him. It was very sad.
Absolutely.
And but we did all our registration outside in the parking lot, and we had a band out there. There was music while people waited, and then we also have welding truck come to that particular repair cafe. So there was welding being done out in the parking lot, and then have it in a church. So we used our phones, and when the person was ready to come in, they'd be escorted to the table where their repair coach was. And our repair coaches were about like 15 to 20 feet apart. So, and you were not even allowed to drink coffee in the church. Like you had to keep your mask on at all times. So, and people could not bring like a second person with them. We only allowed like one person, one item. So we weren't crowded. So that's how we controlled the traffic, and it went really well. I was shocked at and how many people showed up. But some of our repair coaches canceled at the last minute, and so those things happen. and you just kind of do it on the fly. So maybe some people were disappointed, and then we have a list of where to send them to if there's another repair cafe about to happen, so they at least have an alternative plan. And
Generous.
And so anyway, I just wanted to chime in on that, on how we handled it, because I was a bit hesitant to even want to be around people, but it worked out pretty well because we were not close to anybody. And the people with repairs had to kind of stay on one side of the table, because it's a tendency for repairs when people are learning how to do it to be nose to nose with their coach, looking at the stuff and fixing it. And we kind of discourage that as much as possible, to keep a distance. So
we're all trying to figure it out. We're, in each of our spaces and with our people, but we're trying. So I think that's half the battle.
And people are very grateful. That's a really good idea about one person, one item. And we also did not serve even tea or coffee inside because we figured you'd have to take your mask off to eat or drink it, and we couldn't do that.
Exactly. The church had that rule. We didn't even make it up. They just said everybody has to have their mask on at all times. So we complied, and it worked out fine. People weren't complaining. They just were probably happy that they were able to come back to a repair cafe and make an effort to repair their item. And we did a lot of repairs. So
That's great.
We had the zipper lady. That was our
Oh, good
first
for
time.
you.
But no, came in. That was I didn't know we were gonna have her, but yeah. I was like, darn, all those broken zippers I have at home. So yeah. So, but thank you for speaking, Elizabeth. That was I saw you at John's memorial. So, we'll carry on in his
Yes, we will.
in his spirit. Yeah.
Yes, we will.
On that note, I would say that John also was instrumental in helping me so he helped me develop the Repair Cafe in Hastings, and then I met Ariella, who is the co-producer with me, and then we built it together. But he was very influential and very supportive of just go for it, Lindsay, it will happen. And he got to come to our first one that we had in Hastings, and it was a delight to have him there.
Yeah, and someone once said, a really good leader doesn't produce followers. A really good leader produces other leaders, and that's what he did.
Yeah.
Sounds like it. Truly sounds like it.
Well, thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. This was wonderful, and
Great.
thanks for offering to do it. I'm sorry, it would have been so fabulous to be in person, but this was a great second option. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay.
So Debbie and Elizabeth, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Can you hit stop record?
Let's see.
Elizabeth, that was great.
Yes.
Okay. Just say
Did
that was great. You made me cry almost a couple of times. That was really lovely. That was a great presentation. Thank you.
I was afraid I was talking too fast. Was it okay?
No, you're in New York. It's fine.
Fine. All right. I can see where it says pause and stop recording. I'm doing that.
Okay, so let's do that and say good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Night.